Thank you. My name is Jeanne Haynes, and you are in for a special treat. These are stories that were created in 6 morning classes in July 2020, in the time of COVID and sheltering in place. And I believe that this particular unique time is what has contributed for the quality of these stories, which are particular, there's a particular presence and poignancies. There are 7 tellers, 7 senior tellers, and I will give you their names in the order in which they're going to come. I will self-introduce each of them before they tell. Also to tell you that you who are guests will remain muted. And we miss that, believe me, as much as you do, to not hear that audience response. At the very end of our class, we will go to opening everyone up and having some Towers of Babel kind of conversation. The storytellers are in this order: Barbara Rogers, Claire Castell, Jeanne Lupton. Then we will take a 5-minute break and come back to hear Judy Kennedy, LaVonne Taft, Marilyn Marco, and Mary Bustamonte. After each one tells, we will go to gallery as orchestrated by this incredible individual. I think he's gone off camera now, by the name of Rick Taft, who happens to be the husband of LaVonne Taft, one of our tellers, without whom which none of this would have been possible, believe me. And he will then open it up for everyone to have some words at the very end of the day. All right. So, a few words about our very first teller, Barbara Rogers. Barbara brings other talents to her storytelling. She is a musician and a poet. And this particular story is a poem interspersed with prose. It's such a beautiful piece, so timely. I have asked her to send it to us all in an email after the performance so that we can keep this as a historic piece. The name of her piece is entitled Life Has Other Plans. So Barbara, if you're there, love, I know you are, this is your time to tell your poem story.
I'm right here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Life is what happens while you are making other plans. I never paid much attention to it, but it's just kind of catchy. And what comes up for me is often more interesting than what's on my to-do list anyway. Granted, life has its ups and downs. I like to refer to as peaks and valleys. From the top of the mountain, the view is incredible and inspiring, and discoveries await in the valley below. I have been fascinated by documentaries about people living in relative isolation, in wilderness cabins, on solo treks through isolated country, even long-haul truck drivers and mountain men, and small communities in the farthest reaches of the earth. I wondered what that must be like. That is, until the day of the stay-at-home order in early March. There was a message on the screen. I wasn't sure what this would mean. So in early March, this came through. Shelter in place Cover your face. The words framed by a pandemic hanging precariously between family conversations and hourly media reports. We have been through many crises in this nation and worldwide. Curfews, blackouts, protests, hurricanes, wildfires, death, and destruction. At first glance, it seemed a curiosity. Surely, just a temporary emergency passing through. As time went on, COVID-19 was here to stay. People modified their routines, and some people didn't. They just complained about interruption to their life. The cloud lifted, and reality settled in. The easy breezy, do anything, go anywhere, California mindset replaced by cautious, limited ventures outside. Life slowed down, and miraculous for me, it didn't come to a complete stop. But the reality, like a river, caught people in its current, and they desperately tried to swim upstream. I found new pathways and a silver lining to the fear and isolation. Time. Time. Time is the precious gold I had rushed by in my quest to fill every day with more. More friends, more events, more shopping, more and more. Now, filled with deep breaths, fresh air. Time to actually smell the roses that linger in the fragrance. Time to try something new. Something I never had enough time to do. Time for laughter in the most trying of times. Time to give help to others. Not tomorrow, today. Time to really and truly give it away. Time to reflect, bring back traditions that have weathered the storm, like farm fresh delivery on Friday morn. Produce that reminds me of picked carrots and tomatoes straight from the ground at my grandmother's orchard, where I could often be found. Milk, yogurt, cheese, freshly churned butter and eggs delivered to my home every week. Farm fresh delivery is something I will continue to keep. Childhood memories of the postman and the milkman, special heroes to me. The milkman is so handsome and friendly. I'm gonna marry him when I grow up. And on Saturday mornings, I waited patiently for his smiling face to show up. What else intrigues me with all this time on my hands? With produce delivered, there's time to bring out my chef and review old loaves and new recipes. I've shared quite a few. I bought a beautiful piano recently. I used to be too busy to practice. Now I have the time free. As my fingers fly across the melodious keys, I'm inspired by the music passed down through centuries. Take good care, for in the long run, there is still much work to be done. The history of our nation has sugar-coated the despair. Time to uncover the long overdue truths and commit to the repair. To listen, to look into the depth of their eyes, to know and understand where the truth resides. The pandemic guidelines may say no one less than 6 feet away. Zoom and FaceTime provide another view, though sometimes it seems like an illusion. There's texting and email and telephone too. We share memories, stories, laughter and tears more often. They bring us closer together. Family and friends are more precious than ever. Though it's not the same as a hug and a touch, we have time to listen fully and not in a rush. My calendar is still full of things I'd like to put into play. With time on my side, I can easily move them to another day. Thank you. I'd also like to say that as life, as I said in the beginning, life has plans. There is just out the letter that John Lewis wrote before he died. And I would recommend that everyone read it. The title is Together You Can Redeem the Soul of Our Nation. And it's in the New York Times, and you can see it online. I will also send an email with the link. So thank you. Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to gallery for claps. Mr. Rick? I guess not.
You're in gallery right now. So again, the screen is local. So whatever you see is what you're seeing. The recording will be different.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. Well, welcome again to those who are here with us. I see by my side that there are 26 participants. We're thrilled to have you. And again, to say to those who came in later, to know this is our first time doing this. Thank God Rick Taft is with us to manage, but this system is a bit clunky and so different from we as storytellers, a connecting art where we're looking at our audience. Here, we're looking at ourselves and trying to say, oh dear, is that what I did with my hair? Why didn't I wear something else? Anyway, on and on. So let's give one more round. If you can show hands. This is how we get to go. Barbara, that is such a beautiful poem. Thank you so much. And thank you for the addition of information about John Lewis. I have been glued to the television watching these extraordinary ceremonies in honor of what he has done for our country. Okay, our next teller will be Claire Castell. Now, Claire did something different this time. She combined a third person telling, and then it flows into a first person telling of a very personal story. It was a bit of a challenge. We enjoyed watching it grow. putting two pieces together. And the title of her piece is In the Best Interest, Claire Castell.
Can you all hear me? Do a thumbs up? Yep, okay. Well, welcome friends. Thank you for joining us. Yes, the story has been percolating for a while. It's one of those stories that I had to get out of me. Rita walked out of the doctor's office in a fog. She was pregnant. It was 1947, September 1947 in Chicago. The doctor had been really kind. Dr. Kaufman said, I know you're not married and I'll help you through this. When you start to show, we'll make arrangements for you to stay at the Sisters of Mercy. And then when the baby's born, we'll find a nice married couple to take your baby and take care of it and give it everything it needs. I know that's what you want. It's in the best interest of the baby and it's in the best interest of everyone. And then he patted her hand and she wandered out into the lobby and into the street. She needed to think, and her best thinking place was down at the lake. She took the L at LaSalle and rode down to the lake and got to walking. It was windy and cold. It always is down there. And she had a good coat on though, and she pulled on her gloves. She said to herself, how did this happen? And then she laughs. Of course I know how it happened. She finally had some private time with Jacob when her roommate was out. She had been living on her own for some years. She had moved out. She was in her late 20s and she had to move out of her parents' house because her father was so oppressive. Her mother was kind, but her four brothers had started to launch their lives, starting their big Irish families, but she wanted to have fun. So she moved out and got her own apartment with a roommate, and she got a job. She was a court reporter during the day, and in the evenings she would go out to the jazz clubs. She loved to dance and hear music, and she met Jacob at the Savoy Ballroom. He was a clarinet player. He played in a band called the Solitaires, and he was so much fun. He made her laugh and laugh, and it wasn't meant to be serious. In fact, she hadn't even really heard very much from Jacob lately. Well, she had to tell her mother, and her mother sobbed, oh, how could you let this happen? And then father found out and he went ballistic and he started raging about her mental instability. She must be crazy. I'm going to put you in an institution. You must be one of those nymphomaniacs. Well, she left her parents' house. It's like, oh, I like sex. Does that make me crazy? Well, she decided not to tell Jacob because he was Jewish and her parents would never allow that. So now that she was in trouble, she decided to take up Dr. Kaufman's advice. She told her office mates and her friends that she was going to go take care of an aunt, a sick aunt in New York. And then when she started to show, she moved in with the Sisters of Mercy. Well, a social worker would come every now and then and she said, oh, we're going to find a nice married couple to take care of your baby for you. We know this is the best interests of you and for the baby. And the sisters, they were terrible. You got pregnant out of wedlock. That's a sin, and that proves you're unfit to be a mother. She started to believe these people, her father. Maybe she was crazy, maybe she was unfit. Well, just before her time, Dr. Kaufman came to visit her at Sisters of Mary. And he said, good news, I've found a wonderful couple to adopt your baby. They're friends of mine. They're going to fly in and they're going to take your baby as soon as he or she is born. And the baby is going to be fine. And I know that this is going to be in the best interest for you and for everyone, and for the baby in particular. She said, okay. She had thought about keeping the baby. She wanted to have children, and this might be her last chance, but she was starting to believe that maybe she was unfit. So she allowed that to happen. When the baby was born, it was a little girl, and she was allowed to hold her for a little while, just a few minutes. She was so strong and pretty. And then the nurses whisked her away, and they hissed, now your job is to forget this ever happened. Go back to your life. Pretend this never happened, and it'll be in the best interest of everyone. Well, she did go back to her job and her family and friends, but she never forgot. Well, a couple of years later, Rita meets a new man and marries him, Clarence. And she has twin daughters. And I am one of them. Now, of course, I was a child, so I never knew about this history. And, as children, you never imagine your parents had a life before you were born. And then, unfortunately, she died when we were 10. We hadn't learned any of this, and then my father died a few years later. So most of my life, I had my twin sister, of course, and had a small family. I had later on my son, and he had married a lovely woman, and I now have granddaughters. So I had a nice little family, very proud of them. They couldn't have possibly been better than they are. Well, I retired in 2017 and decided to go to Ancestry.com and, see what skeletons were in the closet, or, everybody does this when you get a little older. And much to my surprise, I discovered 3 cousins. These were children of my mother, one of my mother's brothers. I knew my mother had 4 brothers, but they had just really disappeared out of our life when she died. So I find these 3 cousins, and they all live in the South, and Patty had taken the DNA testing and I had done it. So we kind of connected, and they're lovely people. They're just delightful. We've been talking on the phone and on email, and we're really looking forward to seeing each other. Well, in the course of this connection, we meet more cousins. Children of another uncle, Uncle Paul, who is prolific. So we now meet 9 of his children. My family is enormous. And of course, everybody has their own children. All these cousins have their own children and sometimes grandchildren. So the size of my family has grown exponentially from maybe us 2 twins to at 12, and then now 40, and it's overwhelming. And we're going to have a big reunion when the COVID is over, so we can meet each other in person. And I have been thrilled. But to top it off, I went back to Ancestry to do a little more work. You arrange the moving heads in your tree. And I saw a note from a woman named Joan. And she said she had done her DNA and that she was related to me and to Patty, my cousin from the South. Oh, great, so we start corresponding. welcome her to the family. I would tell her what we know. But in talking with Patty, nobody has ever heard of her. You know, I thought she was a mystery cousin. Well, all three of us decide that she must be the illegitimate child of one of the uncles. And Joan herself was convinced of that. Well, that's fine. We don't care. That's wonderful. Well, one night I'm reading the details about the DNA matching, and I noticed that the percentage of my matching to Joan is double that matches to my cousin Patty. And I start to realize the implications of that. The next day it's confirmed when Joan sends an email and is talking about her wonderful adoptive parents. And she says, yeah, a family friend, Dr. Kaufman, made the arrangements. He was in Chicago and my parents flew out. I'm gobsmacked. I say, Joan, Dr. Jerome Kaufman is the name on my birth certificate. He was my mother's doctor and my sister, my twin sister, obviously. That means you're my half-sister. You're the child of my mother, Rita. And we discovered that this woman, real live woman, is Rita's first child that nobody knew about, nobody living knew about anyway. And we're thrilled. And again, we've been talking and we hope to meet in person. So my family has just done this marvelous expansion. Now, the one thing that still bothers me though, was this really in the best interests of everyone? Maybe. But I do like to think that maybe Rita is up there kind of looking down and seeing that her daughters have been united. And I hope that my sister and I can pass a little love on from Rita to her. All right, muting.
What an amazing story, Claire.
Oh,
Wow.
let me show you something, one more. Can you guys see this?
Wow.
That's us. Me on my father's lap.
Yes. Oh, thank you. What a treasure of an information to find out, and the best to you in becoming closer to your new sister, Joan. And she must be thrilled to find the two of you. Thank you so much. Okay, our next teller, Jeanne Lupton. The title of her story is Old Sitting Woman. And it's interesting because just 4 days ago, our Jeanne Lupton, on a day in class, turned 75. We had a little virtual celebration, and she was just saying what joy it is that she's experiencing during this time. She's an inspiration to know and to hear. Let us welcome Jeanne Lupton.
Hi, sorry for the delay. So this is Old Sitting Woman. Woo-hoo! Those are poems, not babies. She is a spiritual glamour shot of me in sculptural form because she's open to the cosmos. Her heart is open, her mind is open, her mouth is open, spouting poems. I made this sculpture when I was 25, and it was my first stay at the Northern Virginia Mental Health Hospital after a suicide attempt. I had become ill at age 19 during my fall semester at college as a sophomore with what was later, much later diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. And this disorder combines the symptoms of schizophrenia and bipolar disease. And my particular brand was paranoia. So I was in and out of mental hospitals for about 12 years. And then when I was 35, a doctor prescribed Haldol, which has saved my life every day since January of 1980. That was the beginning of my healing. And I began psychotherapy about the same time. So both of those things have contributed enormously to my healing. There have been many steps to my healing journey. And I quit smoking and I quit drinking. Menopause was a great relief because I could finally think of something besides sex. I had a relationship with a wonderful woman, which opened my heart and opened my mind, and it was wonderful. I began writing again after a 30-year silence. I had started writing as soon as I could read, but when I became so miserable, I couldn't do that. But at 47, I began writing again. At age 50, I had my first haiku published. And thereafter, I've had many haiku and many tanka published. Tanka is a related Japanese form. It's the parent poem of haiku, 1,400 years old. And it's my favorite thing in life to write tanka. So when I was 57, I moved to California. This was another huge step in my healing. I've been very happy here. And for 13 years, I've lived at Strawberry Creek Lodge, which is a senior community in Berkeley. And I love it here. And for the past 4 months of the pandemic, I have been in my tiny apartment, which I also love, and at Strawberry. And I've treated it as a retreat since the beginning. So grateful I am for the free time. Before the pandemic, I was working 30 hours a week here at Strawberry as a part-time caregiver and a part-time desk clerk, and enjoying those jobs very much. But the free time is just wonderful. I'm so grateful for it. So I've been doing the keto program and fasting and walking 2 miles a day, and recently resumed doing yoga. I'm doing lots of yoga. So it's been a very healing experience for me. One day I was reading the big book of Christian mysticism, and suddenly in my heart, I felt God. It was a sense of perfect, complete love. There was a warm feeling, and I could see in my mind's eye a soft, ancient, golden glow around my heart, and it's still there. Well, this was a miracle. So pretty soon I started meditating with a practice called centering prayer. And I contacted a spiritual director who I've been working with every month. And in a conversation with my sister Lynn in Colorado, I mentioned, well, Jesus is very important to me. And she said, for me, it's not so much Jesus as Christ consciousness. And I said, well, how do I learn about that? And she mentioned Marianne Williamson's books as a good way to learn the principles of A Course in Miracles, which Lynn has been studying for years. So I started reading Marianne Williamson. Now, the day before Father's Day, I was reading her book, The Gift of Change. I was reading along, and every so often I would stop to pray and end up crying, even sobbing. And this happened 3 times during the course of my reading that book that day. And the 3rd time I was reading about atonement. And from what I understand from the book, the idea is to tell God your mistakes. We do not sin because that would require judgment. And God does not judge us, he loves us. We are already perfect, but on the way to being more perfect, we make mistakes. And it's good to ask God for atonement and a better way to live. We are all innocent. If I'm innocent, then you're innocent. And this is the importance of forgiveness of ourselves and everybody else. So the book also said, if you feel called to make amends, go ahead and do that. And I immediately thought of my siblings and decided I would contact them. And the next day, Father's Day, I called my baby sister, Laurie, in Maryland, who I think was the most hurt by my illness. She was only 8 when I became ill, and we had been close before that, very close. And when I became ill, I couldn't be close to anybody, not even myself. So I said to Laurie, I am deeply sorry for the pain I caused you and the family during my illness. And there was a pause. And then she said, is that all? And we laughed. And she said, I love you. And I felt really overjoyed. I felt accepted. I felt a part of the family. I felt redeemed. And so we hung up, and then I emailed my brother in Austin, who had not spoken to me since our mother died in '96. I think he was pretty mad about something, and I didn't know what. And he emailed me back, I have forgiven you. And then he went on to chat about the pandemic in his email. Well, I cried and cried. This was huge to me. Forgiveness. Then I called Lynn in Colorado, and I said, I am deeply sorry for the pain I caused you and the family during my illness, trying not to cry. There were tears in my voice, though. And after a pause, she said, I am so glad you're doing this. I said, it probably should be said more than once. And she said, not to me. And then she said, you have always been and will always be my big sister. This was the most beautiful thing I could have heard, because in my mind, for many years, I couldn't be a big sister. So that was on Father's Day. And in the next few days, I noticed the presence in spirit of my father for the first time since he died. And I think he was delighted with the family shift in energy on his day. And since then, we've been working together on forgiveness. This was a very difficult relationship, and he's present to me now in spirit in a very loving way. So the healing continues. Old Sitting Woman is doing lots of yoga, and she's walking 2 miles a day. And so the healing continues. And I would like to mention that I had a severe tremor in my left hand for several years. And this year it has 95% gone away. And I thank God for that. And now I'd like to read 3 tanka that I wrote about turning 75. It was a very joyous day, and I'm enjoying my 4th quarter of a century so far. 1, to be a woman, we are made, not born. 75 years on, I'm making some progress toward an open heart. 2, those parents show up for my 75th. So good to see them together for the first time since Dad died in 91. 3, today I do not need any food. 75th birthday. For my next quarter century, I will be a lovetarian.
Oh, Jeannie, what a treat. Wow. It's such an example of these stories coming from our hearts, from our time, and putting them in words to share with us, to feel that inspiration, that joy, atonement. What a thing. And as you noticed, Jeannie is another of our poets, tellers. So we're going to take now a 5-minute break. Please don't make it any longer. We're running a little 15 minutes behind. So, in fact, if you can get back in 4, that would be terrific. We'll see you back then. Thank you so much. Everyone, okay? I'm hearing different things. Judy, the title of Judy's story is How a Garden Grows. And this is another of our classic tales, historic, about this particular time. And we're using this time for her own growth and for the growth of beautiful. Someday, Judy, we're all going to come over and have some of those carrots and cucumbers. Okay. So, ta-da.
Okay.
And mute yourself.
Yeah, can everyone hear me? I guess so. Oh, I hope so. Okay. I'll begin by telling you about a teacher friend of mine who worked with adolescents and did very interesting things with them, including planting a garden. James, a very tall guy, big guy, was holding tiny little carrot seeds in his hand, and he asked an interesting question. Ms. Nima, how do these carrot seeds know how to become carrots? That question touched my heart. I actually know the answer to how seeds become carrots or other kinds of vegetables, but that was not the importance. The importance was the question itself and the connection between Big James and the little carrot seed. And I remembered back to a time when I was 8 years old and I was holding a big grapefruit seed in my hand, in my little tiny hand. And someone told me, if you put that in the ground, you'll get a grapefruit tree. So I followed directions, stuck that seed way down in a flower pot and waited and watched and waited and watched, and nothing happened. Some weeds grew for a little and then they died. So there was no weeds, no grapefruit tree. And I was really discouraged. And I thought, I can't take care of plants. I can't grow things. And that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. It was called having black thumbs, and I knew that that's what I had and could not take care of any plants. That's not to say that I didn't like plants. I loved to walk in the woods and smell the fragrances and look at the majestic trees and the little sweet wildflowers. And I loved them because they knew how to take care of themselves. Well, back in 1976, I wanted to buy a house in Berkeley. I had come from New York, and now I lived in Berkeley. And I saw a house, and it was fine. And then I opened the back door, and I was shocked at what I saw. There were well-established trees, a maple tree, a plum tree, a cherry tree, an olive tree. There were small flowers. I didn't know what they were. There was grass. I said, does this park come with a house? Oh, and the realtor laughed at me. Of course it does. Well, I bought that house. And my children grew up there, and they played in the backyard. My son Eli, he had a basketball hoop, and he and his friends played basketball. My daughter Serena played there with her friends, and she wanted to plant things. And I said, no, let's go to the zoo instead. Planting was not my thing. Somehow the garden survived, kind of. And then the years went by. And next thing you know, it's 2009, and my daughter Serena and her husband, to-be, Mondo, are going to have their ceremony in the backyard. And they go to work. They plant new grass. Mondo makes a huge circle of pristine white stones. The garden is beautiful. The ceremony is beautiful. But I can take no credit for that gorgeous garden. Well, now it's spring 2020. It's beautiful. The weather is wonderful. But it's COVID-19 time. It's a very dark time in our country. One day, my son Eli, who now lives across the street, comes running to me and says, Mom, how about having some chickens in the backyard? Chickens? Why? Oh, well, my friend DeAndre's son, William, who's a high school kid, he needs a place to put his beloved chickens. Are there any roosters? I'm sure the neighbors wouldn't appreciate their crowing. No, Mom, all hens. Is William responsible? Oh, yeah, he'll take very good care of the chickens. All you have to do is provide the space. Well, okay, I'll give it a try. If I don't like those chickens, I'll just send them back. So next day, William and some friends, my son Eli, who now lives across the street, and my granddaughter Alina come over, and they build a chicken coop where the chickens can be safely put at night. And they build a little fence around a part of the yard where the chickens can play and roam. Okay. And then next day, 4 chickens arrive. Much to my surprise, they're gorgeous and all different. There's honey, there's butternut, there's cinnamon, and there's pepper. And they are all different colors, which match their names and their names that Alina gave them. And honey is soft. Her color is yellow like honey, and you feel like you're putting your fingers in honey when you touch her, except they don't come out sticky. And cinnamon talks. And butternut talks too. All those chickens are different. Pepper. Now, Pepper seems like she's just a plain black color, but when the sun falls on her feathers, they're iridescent purple. And she will not be confined. She half flies, half jumps out of her little enclosure, and the whole yard becomes hers. She walks around as though she's the queen. I thought this was my yard. Now it's her yard. She looks and explores, and then when she's done for the day, she flies back into her cage and she plays with her sisters, and they also fight sometimes, just like human sisters. Oh, but I love those chickens. What a treat. That was not the end of my story. That was just the beginning. Next thing you know, a neighbor puts out an email. We bought too much soil. If you want to plant things, come and get the extra soil. I delete that because I don't plant things. I don't want dirt. But Eli comes running down the street with containers and great enthusiasm. And he starts to rework that stone circle into a fertile bit of earth. And he and Alina and Chicken Man William, they go to the plant store and they buy seeds and they buy seedlings and they plant. And my granddaughter Alina says, Bubba or Grandma, take those cucumber seeds, put them in a ball of dirt, smush the ball and throw it into the earth. Sounds dumb way to plant things, but I follow her direction and I watch. Nothing grows. Nothing grows. I knew it. But the next day, many things are growing. Seedlings are everywhere. And it's not only the cucumber seedlings, everything is growing and thriving. And I get joy in watching the pleasure that my kids get in nurturing their plants. And I begin to walk among the veggies and I praise them and I pat them and I smell them and I watch, especially the tomatoes, flowers, and then tiny green cherry tomatoes that start turning orange and then red. Oh, I just love this garden. Oh, and then we begin harvesting. There's kale, there's lettuce, there's all kinds of stuff, spices, and I get my first cucumber. Cut that cucumber and taste the delicious taste of it. And it suddenly occurs to me that all these years I've had that childhood notion that fruits and vegetables just magically appear in the grocery store. And for the first time, I realized that seeds knew what they were to become and that farmers planted them and picked them. And I wanted to thank all the workers that were responsible for putting food on my table. What miracles in this time of COVID. And I'm thinking also today of the sadness of John Lewis's death, but the miracle of his life, and how as a young man he practiced his preaching to his chickens. I can really relate to that. And how he nourished our souls and helped us to become better people and made this country a better place. So all of these are miracles in this dark time of COVID. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What a delightful story. And again, we're going to come see that garden after this is all over. And yes, another John Lewis, what an astonishing man. So for our next teller, somehow I lost it. Hello?
Hello? We hear you. Oh,
Hear me. Somehow my screen has disappeared. I'm not sure why, but you can hear me, huh? All right.
Yes.
So our next teller is LaVonne Taft, and she has an intriguing title to her piece called "Who is Right and Who is Left?" Now, LaVonne, as you can see, she's learned a lot about Zoom. She's very, very fortunate, you see, because she is married to Rick Taft. And they were able, with their new knowledge, to like put up a ladder, have a different iPad, and now you can see her not just face full, but body full. Let us welcome LaVonne Taft.
Hello, everyone. High school graduation, senior prom, senior photos, the yearbook, maybe a class ring, all-night party. But not for me. No class ring, no all-night party, no prom. Well, I graduate all right, but that was about all. My father had been laid off some months before, and what money we had was being used for living expenses. Dad is 60 years old, and he looks his age. Mom hasn't worked in some 20 years. I just didn't have the heart to ask them to fund my graduation festivities. So I don't. My friends do it all, including seeing Frankie Valley and the Four Seasons in downtown Los Angeles. Big girls don't cry, they don't cry. What do I do on graduation night? My parents, my brothers, and their wives take me to Howard Johnson's for dinner. And I'm home in bed by 9 o'clock with my face in the pillow, crying myself to sleep. Big girls do cry. College is out, no money. My dad can't find a job, but I find something right away in a factory. Veritron West Electronics. I'm now a card-carrying member of the Electrical Workers Union. And every payday, I bring my paycheck home to Mom. I turn it over. We're family. That's what family does. Veritron West. Inside was like a gray metal box, like being inside a metal cube. Harsh lights shine down like an interrogation cell. I feel like screaming, okay, I did it, I'll talk. I find my work table in Veritron and I meet Linda. Oh, you're at our table, groovy. They told me to train the new girl at the table and you're it. But first, I'd like to have you meet some of the crew. This is Sally and this is Jane. Girls, this is LaVonne. I think just watch what we do today and I'll teach you how to wire the parts later. LaVonne, those two drive me crazy. Sally, all she talks about is cleaning her dust kittens at home. And she said today she thinks they breed at home just to make her mad when she's not there. And I don't think she was kidding. Jane, she says she has headaches and she rubs her temples till I think she's gonna rub her skin off. And then she goes out at lunch and drinks and comes back sloshed. We're gonna need some really good grass to take care of those two. Our next potluck here, I'm gonna make some special brownies. Alice B. Toklas style. Okay, wiring the parts. See this rack? Okay, take the rack and you put it up on those hooks that are suspended from the ceiling. You take that copper wire and you fasten it to the top of the rack. You grab a part and you wrap it. You grab another part, you wrap it. You grab another part and you wrap it. And then you tie it off at the bottom. Then you get another wire. You tie it off at the top, grab a part and wrap it. Grab a part and wrap it. Grab a part and wrap it and tie it off. And you keep going, row after row till you reach the end. Take that rack, pass it off, and grab another rack. Hang it on those hooks, grab that copper wire, and you take a part and wrap it, take a part and wrap it, and you do it row after row after row. Rack after rack after rack until the end of the day. Those parts are dipped in real gold, and the parts go in radios and TVs. Hey, you got kids? No? Well, I do. He's 3 years old, Mikey. My boyfriend is long gone, a real twerp. But you know, it's so hard to party when you got a kid. But tonight, I'm gonna party. I'm gonna drop Mikey off at my sister's, and my new boyfriend is coming over, and we're gonna go back to his place. You wanna come? No? And then there is Janice. Blonde, frizzy-haired Janice from Quality Control. Usually you can find her darkening the door to the outside because she's always on a smoke break. She has spotted me on one of my many treks to the water fountain to take no-dos. I am so bored and sleepy. Hey, LaVonne, what's those little white pills you're taking there? Some pills make you larger and some pills make you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all. They're no-dos, Janice. Oh, mine are too. Oh, I hate this place. It's like a scene from a Dickens novel. I feel like David Copperfield or Oliver. This has got to be debtor's prison. And if I see another rack in those parts, until one day, my salvation is transferred to my table right next to me. Eleanor. She's probably 20 years my senior, maybe in her mid-40s, but we become fast friends. She has 5 kids, and every day she tells us about their antics, and we laugh all day. We talk all day. I don't even mind going to work because I can talk to Eleanor. We grow closer. I just love you, Eleanor. Love you too, sweetie. Eleanor is Filipina, and she had told me once that she grew up in the Philippines. And so one day I asked her, hey, Eleanor, it must have been really fun to grow up in the Philippines, huh? LaVonne, not so much. I grew up in my village and I was very happy. But in 1941, I was a young bride with a new baby daughter. We got word that the Japanese had invaded my country. It was some 10 hours after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The soldiers were spotted by the sugarcane workers in the fields. And they said that they were coming towards our village and that we had to drop everything and run to the mountains. And we did, with just the clothes we had on. We had to pass up so much food because we were running. If only we'd had baskets or a cart to gather food that we had to pass up. We ran across a vacant field that had calabasa, yellow squash, but we couldn't gather it. We did pull off bananas and bayabas and some guava leaves that you can boil to make tea, but not very much. The food we had was just what we could carry in our hands. It went quickly. So little food, so little water. Water. I couldn't bring my milk in. And my baby died. My baby girl. I grieved so my hair fell out. Oh, Eleanor, I'm so sorry that happened to you. How insignificant my non-celebration of graduation or my bummer job seems now. My experience, a disappointment. Eleanor's a tragedy. It's been 50 years and I still think of Eleanor. And a quote by Bertrand Russell: "War does not determine who is right, only who is left." Later on, I quit Veritron and I start college and I lose track of Eleanor. She has 5 children, but there's always the one that is lost.
Unmute. Unmute. There it is. Okay. Oh, LaVonne, that story just touches us every time we hear it. What a beautiful story, well told, and a learning experience. Thank you. Our next teller, Marilyn Marco. And LaVonne, you need to mute. I'll do it for you. Okay. Okay. And there she is, our next teller, Marilyn Marco. And the title of her piece says it all, except the way in which she tells it is something else. The title is The Whale Rescue. And not to pun, but this is one whale of a story. Marilyn, tell us your story.
Hi, everyone. It's 1989, and my husband Jim and I are anchored on our 37-foot sailboat off the city of La Paz, Baja, Mexico. This is the early part of our cruising years, and it's also the early part of our marriage. We had only married 2 years before. We had sailed out under the Golden Gate, turned left, and headed down the coast. So it's about 10 o'clock in the morning on our boat, and we're getting a leisurely start to the day, when all of a sudden the VHF radio comes on with an urgent call from a Mexican fisherman. "Por favor, all cruisers, please come help us rescue a stranded whale." He gives us the nearby location. We immediately run and jump into our rubber dinghy, which is our local transport, that is attached to the stern of our boat. We untie the dinghy and we get the outboard motor roaring to life and we speed out to the location. And as we approach, we come upon this enormous whale that is submerged in only a few inches of water. And we don't know how this has happened, but So we get there, we quickly throw out the anchor on our dinghy and secure the dinghy. And as we come upon the scene, all the other cruisers, those are the people on the sailboats, are responding to this emergency call and streaming into the location. Till finally we have about 25 people. So La Paz is situated in front. The boats are anchored in front of La Paz. Behind the boats, there's an enormous island, behind which is a narrow channel of water that runs and leads back out to the open ocean. It appears that this whale had been swimming through that channel and had gotten stranded when the tide went out. We don't know how this happened, but we know we have limited time to save this magnificent creature. So we jump out of our dinghy as we get there, and at first the whale is thrashing around trying to break free, and her flukes, that's the tail, is going wildly up and down. But as we approach the whale, it becomes quiet. It has been noted many times that when whales know they are about to be rescued, they become docile. We jump out of our dinghy into about ankle-deep water. And the first thing I want to do when I approach this whale is to put my hands on its body. Now, before this, a man has already come out from the Department of Fisheries, and he says, yes, this is a female gray whale, 44 feet long, about 40 tons. And I'm going, that is bigger than our ocean-going 37-foot sailboat. So I come up to the whale and I put my hands on her body. So there are about 20 feet of whale body to my left, and there's about 20 feet of whale body to my right. And I can't even see the top of the whale when I look up. It's maybe 10, 15 feet above my head. Put my hands on her body, and the skin is kind of wet and warm and it feels rubbery, but I can feel the life force pulsing beneath my hands. So I step back and I begin to walk around this whale, and I notice that her eye near her fin is closed on the right side. I walk around the snout to the opposite side of the whale, and the eye on that side of her near the fin is also closed. So as a group, we decide that what we need to do is start digging a trench next to this whale, because when whales are out of the water, they suffocate from their weight. So all of a sudden, the sand is flying, and we are digging a huge trench beside this whale, using our hands, using pails, whatever we can get our hands on. One cruiser even manages to break a high-pressure hose and somehow hook it up to his dinghy, and he's hosing out large quantities of sand, which is really helpful. So we dig, and sand is flying. And then all 25 of us run around to the other side of the whale, and we push, and we push, and we push. Have you ever tried to push 40 tons of whale? So we run back around to the other side, dig some more, deepen the trench, keep digging, and we're doing this feverishly. And then we run back around to the other side, and we push and push and push. Run back again, dig some more, get that sand out of there. We've got to get her into deeper water somehow. We do this maybe about 10 times. And then one time we're pushing on her when all of a sudden, she begins to work with us. and she begins to rock her body into the trench. Amazing. So we keep digging, we keep digging, we keep digging. We also walk around this whale and we do a little grooming on her. We pick off the barnacles. We also keep her wet all day. That's important. And at one point we put a tarp over the top of her body to keep the sun off. But we know that basically we have to wait until the tide comes back in. And that's not going to be until the afternoon. Meanwhile, we notice that out in the deeper water, the ocean water, there are other gray whales out there. And they are spy hopping, which is lunging their giant bodies straight up out of the water so they can look and see what's going on over there. We also notice that there's a pod of dolphins swimming around all day. So we continue digging. We continue this process of digging and digging and deepening that trench, pushing on her and pushing on her. Well, this goes on for several hours, but eventually the cruisers start peeling off and returning to their boats. There are about 10 of us who stay. We are not going to give up on this whale. We continue the process of digging and digging, and gradually, the water begins to rise. The tide begins to come back in. By now, it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The water continues to rise, and pretty soon, she is almost submerged, and she suddenly gets the idea that maybe she can break free. So then she's nearly covered with water, and all of a sudden she gets her flukes going. Get out of the way! She's about to take off. Look out! And those flukes are going, and sure enough, she is able to break free, and we scream with joy. And then Jim and I look at each other and we notice that that pod of dolphins that we had seen has surrounded her, and they're piloting her out the narrow channel, out to the ocean, because she would have been disoriented. And Jim and I look at each other and I say, honey, let's go follow her. So he says, yeah. We jump in our dinghy, take up the anchor, roar out to where the whale has gone. We get out there and we cut the motor so that we're just floating. And a couple of times we see the whale surface for air. We're just waiting and watching. And all of a sudden, our whale is right beside our dinghy. And then the next thing is she suddenly lifts her fin to expose the white underside. And then she puts it back down in the water and she swims off.
Oh, another story we never tire of hearing of, and breaking free that whale. And that moment, Sweet Pea, when you put your hands on her, you really bring us to that incredible experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So our next, and she will be our grand finale, is Mary Bustamonte. And she's going to tell a story, one of those universal stories that we can all relate to and go back in our frame of reference to relive it with her, entitled First Kiss. Mary.
Everybody remembers their first kiss. Mine was definitely memorable. I was 15 more like 15 years and 7 months. Let me tell you what happened. I had a group of friends in high school. We were the drama geeks. We hung out all the time. Peter and Rob and Bob and Johnny, they did the sound and the lights for the plays. I was an actress. I wanted to be famous someday. Now, at one of the rehearsals, Bob handed me a note. It said, "Don't open until 7 o'clock." He didn't want me to open in front of other people. I waited and waited, and I finally opened it. Inside was just one line. It said, "Do you want to go out with me?" Then there were 2 words, yes and no. I picked yes. 10 days later, we went on our date. We went to see Fast Times at Ridgemont High. We sat in the theater and Bob made his move. He leaned over, put his arm around me. This was it. I was not going to be sweet 16 and never been kissed. I was ready. He leaned over and said, "Do you want some popcorn?" Okay, the popcorn was buttery and it was salty, but it's not what I wanted. It may have been Fast Times up on the screen. It was not Fast Times in our theater seats. 2 weeks later was date number 2. He took me to his favorite Italian restaurant. We came in, it smelled, oh my gosh, so wonderful. The tomatoes, the spices. I knew I wanted to have lasagna and maybe I'd have a kiss for dessert. We sat there and thought what a wonderful meal this was going to be. What Bob forgot to tell me is his brother-in-law owned the restaurant. Suddenly, there was a trail of people coming up to talk to us. His mom, his grandma, his sister, his teenage niece, his nephew. The list just kept going on and on. Honestly, the whole thing was kind of a blur. All I remember is they kept saying, "Manja, manja, eat, eat." It was quite the afternoon. Now back at school, things were going pretty well. I was a good student, well, in everything except PE. Now, PE was really difficult, and my friend Johnny was in the class. Now, Bob had beautiful curly brown hair, but Johnny, he had that blonde whoop-de-doo going, teeny tiny little mustache. He was just amazing. Think Brad Pitt. Well, Johnny was in my PE class. Every Wednesday, we'd have to run all around the school. We ran a mile. We'd run through the school, and then our last part would be running the track. Johnny would be the first to finish. I would huff and puff with my asthma. Now, Johnny, after he finished, would wait for me, and then he'd go to the track and run that last lap with me, cheering me along. You know, I kind of mistook his kindness for love. He just made me swoon. Then came the special day, April 25th. It was Bob's birthday, and we all went to the Delmonico mansion. Now, mansion's the best that I can describe it. It was the largest house I had ever seen. It had 5 bedrooms. It had a courtyard. It was shaped in a U with the courtyard in the middle. I was a little overwhelmed, honestly. I felt really uncomfortable around rich people. I just didn't feel like I belonged. It was a great party. We really enjoyed it. And right toward the end, Bob asked if he could take me outside to look at the fountain. He looked at me and said, "Thank you for coming." And he leaned forward and he kissed me. It was wonderful until I realized everybody at the party was behind the curtain watching and cheering. I got very upset, ran through the house. I think that I slapped Johnny for being a peeping Tom. I know for sure I screamed at everybody. And then I went to the closest bedroom and hid. I sat on the floor and I cried my eyes out because I had acted like a 3-year-old during my kiss. And I didn't know, I just was overwhelmed. I was sobbing and I tried to calm down. And then I looked over at his niece's open closet door. She had 10 pairs of pants. I would never have 10 pairs of pants. So then I'm crying because of the kiss, and I'm crying because they're rich and I'm poor, and I didn't know what to do. There was no way I was going back out there. Finally, Bob's mom came and put me out of my misery and took me home. Bob and I never went out again. Kind of understandable. You see, this was Bob's first kiss. But we stayed friends, close friends. In fact, I helped plan his 18th birthday party. We kidnapped him and took him to breakfast in his pajamas. Bob and I went to college together. I remember sitting in my dorm room as he told me that he was engaged. As happens, we kind of lost touch with each other over time. But 8 years ago, we reconnected on Facebook. Last week, I told him about this storytelling class and that I was going to tell the story of our first kiss. He sent me the pictures from the party. Oh, it's obvious that I had a crush on Johnny, although we never went out. The pictures just made me smile. It is so wonderful to look at a friendship that lasted a long time after that memorable first kiss.
What a delightful story. And I know all of us in our minds are going back to that time and the excitement, and when the hormones are running. I mean, we could cry as well as laugh, you know, in a turnover moment. Oh my goodness, that is, let me get to, Rick, can I turn on gallery? Can you turn on gallery for us? Can we see?
You can turn on gallery locally. So just hit gallery and you'll see everybody.
I did that, but I'm not seeing all of our guests. I'm seeing the 6 of us and 1 person.
Okay, the guests can all turn on their video camera, turn on the video, and then when you're ready, let me know. We'll unmute and the Tower of Babel will begin, and I will stop recording when you tell me.
Okay. Well, welcome to all of you. What a treat to have you. A very different experience for all of us. This Zoom is an astonishing.
Just a sec.
Oh, sorry. Something else is talking to me. Oh, these screens and machines, but stories remain the same as when we first started telling them those many, many, many times ago in the beginning around the fireplace. I hope that each of you, in hearing our stories, were reminded of some of your own, because that's one of the joys of telling. Also to say that some of us continue to be with Storytellers at Stagebridge. Others of us are formerly with Stagebridge, but we are all here as seniors in this time to look back. And in this special COVID silent time, think about your own stories. Thank you so much. And now, as Rick calls it, the Tower of Babel. Ta-da! Oh, and I didn't mention, sorry, we had 2 birthdays during our class, so that Jeanne Lupton and Ron celebrated birthdays the same day. We had a little virtual birthday party. And Rick, there he is. His youth belies his here. Okay, Rick, take it away.
Alrighty. So at this point, you guys are all able to unmute yourself, and I will stop recording and we'll just wave goodbye to everybody.
Okay, bye-bye, Rick. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now,